Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I still remember the exact moment my phone buzzed, flashing her name on the screen. Clara, my wife, my partner, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had sent a message that would change everything. I'll stay at my sister's tonight. Nothing else. No explanation. No hint of frustration. No excuse. Just those simple words. At first, I thought it was casual. Maybe she needed space, a break from our usual routine. We'd been together for nearly 10 years, and life had started to feel predictable. Kids, work, bills, and the quiet tensions that never quite became arguments. Sometimes, I'd tell myself that this was normal, that marriage wasn't supposed to be fireworks every day, but there was a sting I couldn't ignore. Clara and I had met in college. She was radiant, endlessly energetic, and always had a way of making the room brighter. I, on the other hand, was quieter, steady, maybe even boring in comparison, but she said she liked that about me. You ground me, she'd often whisper, her hand brushing against mine, and for the first few years it felt like we balanced each other perfectly. But recently that balance had started to feel fragile. Little things that never bothered me before suddenly stuck in my mind. She'd leave her coffee cup on the counter for hours, or forget about the plans we discussed the night before. Texts went unanswered. Eye contact became fleeting, and yet, she was still there, still part of my life, making it hard to imagine that something had actually shifted. When I read her message about staying at her sister's, I felt a lump in my throat, a mixture of worry and something heavier, a creeping sense of suspicion I tried desperately to shake off. I replied casually, "Okay, see you tomorrow. Love you." But the words felt hollow. Love. What did it mean now? I spent the evening trying to distract myself. I washed the dishes, folded laundry, even reorganized the pantry. Anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But every few minutes, I found myself staring at the phone, imagining every possible scenario. Had she had a fight with me? Did she just want a night alone? Or worse, was there someone else? It wasn't like Clara to leave without a reason. She was passionate, communicative, expressive, always had been. And yet, that night, the apartment felt different, quieter, and almost foreign. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the couch, the TV flickering uselessly in the background. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt a small, creeping panic. The next morning arrived with an unsettling calm. I woke to the soft light filtering through the blinds, expecting to see Clara's familiar silhouette in the kitchen, a cup of coffee in her hand, a soft smile on her face. But she wasn't there. The apartment smelled faintly of the candles she'd burned the night before, and I realized the dissonance. She wasn't just out. She was gone. I called her, and the phone rang twice before going to voicemail. "Clara, are you okay? Where are you?" No response. I texted, then called again. My messages sat there unread. Panic started to twist my stomach. I couldn't focus on anything. The ticking of the clock sounded loud, invasive. Every shadow, every creak of the floorboards, made me flinch. I went through the apartment methodically, checking every room. Nothing. Her clothes were neatly folded in the drawers. Her favorite mug sat on the counter, untouched. Even the small succulent she'd gotten me for my birthday was in its usual place. And then it hit me. It wasn't just a night at her sister's. She had packed, carefully, silently, leaving no trace of her intent behind. My mind raced. Had I missed signs? Small comments, fleeting frustrations, tiny sighs that I dismissed? She had always been expressive, but lately, I'd been caught up in my own world, thinking our routine was normal, that love was constant and unshakable. I had been blind to the quiet erosion happening right before me. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart hammering, staring at the space she usually occupied. The reality was sinking in, slow and cruel. Clara hadn't just gone for a night. She had left, and I didn't know why. Not yet, but the truth was creeping closer with each tick of the clock. The silence of the apartment pressed against me. It was suffocating, almost accusatory. I felt smaller in my own home, like a stranger navigating familiar rooms. Questions swirled, wild and relentless. Had she felt trapped? Had I failed her in ways I hadn't recognized? Or had this been planned for a long time, a decision she made quietly, leaving me to realize it only after the fact? By mid-morning, the numbness gave way to a tense alertness. I moved mechanically through my routine, coffee, shower, dressing, but every action felt hollow. There was no comfort, no warmth, no familiar laughter echoing off the walls. And yet, amidst the uncertainty, a sharp clarity began to take root. Something had changed irrevocably. I didn't know the full story yet, but one thing was already painfully clear. Whatever came next, my life, our life together, would never be the same. By noon, I had made a decision, even if I didn't yet fully understand the consequences. I called Clara's sister, Maisie, pretending casual concern, careful not to betray the panic bubbling beneath my words. Maisie's tone was light, almost too light. "Oh," she said, she needed a break. "Just a few days at my place, that's all." But the pause before she said it, that subtle hesitation, set off alarms in my chest. Something was off. I thanked her and hung up, pacing the living room like a caged animal. Every text I sent to Clara went unanswered, every voicemail swallowed by silence. And that's when the creeping fear solidified into something colder. She wasn't just avoiding me. She was gone, intentionally, deliberately. I started sorting through our shared emails, financial accounts, and even her old calendar entries, trying to find a clue. Anything. The routine we'd built together, the trust we'd cultivated over nearly a decade, suddenly felt fragile, almost laughably so. Small inconsistencies popped out like bruises. Trips she had scheduled without mentioning them, vague messages to friends I didn't recognize, unexplained withdrawals from our joint account. The realization hit me in a wave. Clara had planned this. Not impulsively, not out of a moment of anger, but with intention. And while I had been careful, patient, the reliable anchor in our relationship, she had been quietly constructing a path to leave. I felt a mix of betrayal and disbelief, sharp as shards pressing against my chest. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me, replaying every conversation, every laugh we'd shared over the past few months. Had I missed the signs? Surely there had been moments. Tiny, subtle, easy to dismiss. I remembered a recent evening, when she had smiled faintly at a text, then quickly hidden her phone. A comment I brushed off as harmless, now flashing in neon clarity. By late afternoon, the numbness had worn off, replaced by a careful, simmering resolve. I knew I had to act, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but to reclaim some control over a life that was suddenly unmoored. Clara had chosen her path. I needed to choose mine. I began the process methodically. Any joint subscriptions in her name were suspended. Any shared credit access reviewed. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no confrontation, just quiet, deliberate steps to protect myself, my life, and our home. Part of me expected a call, from her, from Maisie, a frantic attempt to explain, to apologize. But nothing came. Silence stretched, heavy and unbroken. That night, I slept little, the weight of what had happened pressing against me in the quiet dark. My thoughts kept circling back to the moments we'd taken for granted. The slow dinners, the quiet mornings with coffee in hand, the jokes we'd exchanged when the kids were asleep. Those moments felt like ghosts now, familiar yet unreachable. I realized, bitterly, that I had been living in the comfort of routine, believing that loyalty and consistency alone could sustain a bond. Morning came again, crisp and unyielding. I heard the familiar sound of the front door opening and footsteps approaching the living room. My heart skipped. Could it be Clara returning? I froze, waiting, preparing myself for a confrontation I didn't want but expected. But it wasn't Clara. It was Maisie, standing awkwardly in the doorway, her hands empty, her expression cautious. "Hey!" She left some things with me. Said she didn't know when she'd be back. Relief didn't wash over me. Only a hollow recognition that things had irrevocably shifted. Clara wasn't coming back tonight, maybe not ever, at least not in the way I had hoped. The life we'd built, the shared laughter and quiet comfort, had fractured in silence. And I realized, for the first time with painful clarity, that love alone wasn't enough. Sometimes, even years of devotion couldn't anchor someone who had already made their choice. I spent the day going through the motions, preparing the apartment for solitude, for the strange and unfamiliar feeling of being alone in a space that had always felt shared. Each room, each object, reminded me of her absence. And yet, in that absence, I began to notice something else. A small, emerging sense of freedom. Not the joy of abandonment, not the thrill of revenge, but the quiet clarity that came from recognizing my own strength, my own agency in a situation that had felt entirely out of my control. By evening, I made a decision. I would not chase. I would not plead. I would not hope for a return that might never come. Clara had chosen her path, and I would honor that choice by claiming mine, by walking forward with eyes wide open, accepting that the life I thought I knew had ended, and preparing for a life that I could build again, piece by piece, starting with myself. The phone buzzed again. A message from Clara. "I'll call when I can." I read it, felt the sting, and then set the phone down. No reply. Not yet. Not today. Silence had become my anchor, and for the first time in a long while it felt steady.